Hey, everybody. Welcome to Kinda Libertarian. We're back. Episode number 2, technically number 4, but you're never going to hear the first 2 because, well, we're not that proud of them. Mike Turpin, what's up, brother?
What's up, man? How's it going?
I'm doing good, man. It's springtime. It's nice outside, getting some runs in without freezing my ass off. Stuff, man.
Do you like going for runs? Are you a big
Fucking
runner?
hate it. I fucking hate running. It's the
Oh,
fucking worst. I hate it. I think it's boring. I don't typically run that far, but I know that if I don't run a few times a week, within 2 weeks, I'm just like, oh, I can't run a mile anymore.
right,
So
right.
the trials and tribulations of getting old.
Yeah.
Hey, check this out. Let's
Okay.
dive into this. Check out this headline. Texas Senate passes bill requiring teams with government contracts to play national anthem at games. I saw that, and my first reaction is, why? Why does it matter? I mean, do they do that with other companies they work with? Like if
Mm.
the Texas government is working with a food contractor, they're like, okay, before you start the day, you got to sing the national anthem.
Yeah, and that is ridiculous.
And I get the idea that like if you do a contract with somebody, there can be stipulations, but this is a government contract, which means taxpayers are footing the bill for it. So does that make it different? I don't know the answer to that question, but it really started, like, the more I thought about it, I'm like, this is just another example of like some conservative Republicans being like, look how fucking patriotic we are, and we're gonna force you to do something that you may or may not want to do. Well, how fucking patriotic is that?
This is a really interesting one. It's just unnecessary. Like, I don't understand why that would be something that. So this is just in a contract, this is just a contractual thing. So it's like not like, but yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. What would be the benefit? What would be the point of that? It's exactly what you just said. Just like somebody just trying to just be boastfully patriotic
Right.
and make a bizarre stand. That the only thing, man, I don't relate to that at all.
Well, the
That's
thing of
tough
it
for
is,
me.
it's so ironic because I guarantee you the guys that came up with this are all like free market. I love free markets. The freedom of speech, freedom, all this freedom and liberty stuff. But make sure that sing the national anthem and whatever it may be, sing the national anthem, do the pledge of the Pledge of Allegiance. All this stuff is kind of weird, like growing up, I had to do the Pledge of Allegiance every day, and I never thought about it as a kid. It's just what you do in school. And as I got older, I started thinking, well, this is kind of weird. Like if you just take a step back, like I'm not trying to be unpatriotic or anything. I love living in this country. I'm so fortunate to live in this country. And I'm not trying to put down the idea of showing your love for your country. But when you think about like the Pledge of Allegiance, you say pledge allegiance to a flag. Like I don't pledge my allegiance to a flag. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like my allegiance is to my family. If I was religious, perhaps my God. Um, I guess in some respects I can say, yeah, like I can pledge my allegiance to my country in certain situations, like if we're being attacked or something. But like to pledge my allegiance to a flag, and some people say, well, our soldiers, whenever they fought, died for that flag. They didn't fucking die for a flag. A fucking flag? No, they didn't.
Right. No, then when you break it down like that, I mean, just the opening line in that, it just sounds a little odd. If we didn't do that and somebody brought that up and that was the first line, like if we lived in a world where we didn't pledge allegiance to the flag and somebody's like, hey, by the way, I think we should start saying this thing every day in school. And then you'd make it one line in and be like, that sounds a little bit like some sort of dictatorship or some typical communist country. It doesn't sound like what you would think of when you think of American values, when you think of the types of things that America would also be proud of. Like you said, that the hypocrisy in it. Do you think that is a law? Do you think schools, is that a mandatory thing? Is it county-wide, statewide? Is it
I don't know.
national? I wonder what percentage of schools, or if it's prominent in certain states more than others. I mean, where else is the Pledge of Allegiance even done? Do you
I
know of
think,
any other place?
so I think Boy Scouts did it. When I was a kid, I was in Boy Scouts, and we had to do it in Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Today, I don't know. Like, I don't know if they still do it in schools. Maybe they do in some schools, maybe they don't.
I'm pretty sure it's popular enough because it's always the big issue as to whether or not isn't like one nation under God, like isn't that in there? Isn't God under the Pledge of Allegiance somewhere?
Yeah.
So that's a hot topic that gets brought up a lot. But I mean, yeah, out of sight, out of mind. I don't ever hear the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know if I guess I could make it through it if I started it,
Just
but
thinking that. I'm like, can I really
yeah.
remember the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ah, God, do you want to try? I'm thinking about it in my head. I'm like, I think I know this thing. I
Pledge of
pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
into the republic
for
for
which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation under God.
God, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
something indivisible or something
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a
What?
great line in a Lou Reed song. He said, I think it was, or no, it was a Jello Biafra rant when he said, "Liberty and justice for all who can afford it." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
pretty fucking hard."
I like that. You know, that whole thing sounds like excerpts from like the Old Testament. It's like it just sounds dated when you break it down like that. And
Yeah.
kids are saying that every day. I mean, probably it probably just comes out of their mouth and they don't even know what they're saying. Like I don't think there's a whole lot of influence on the average kid, but it's still kind of weird.
Never thought about that. When I recited as a kid, not once did I ever think about the words or what it meant or anything. Now, I wasn't a smart kid, so maybe that's why. I didn't think about it. I just kind of went along with the day. I don't know
Yeah.
if kids actually ever think about it. I'm guessing not many.
No, I don't think they think about it too much. I think most kids just mumble it and just hate it. And
Hmm.
there's a maybe they do the national anthem. I don't think it's the Pledge of Allegiance. Maybe it is at Mission Barbecue every day at like noon. Have you ever been to
Yeah.
Mission Barbecue? Was that there before you moved? There's a bunch of them in the area and they're getting bigger,
Hmm.
but I imagine there's probably only like 15 of them. But they started in the Maryland, like Baltimore County area, somewhere around there. And at noon, it's a military linked thing. They do a lot of stuff for like veteran stuff, and I think they do a lot of like they offer jobs a lot. I think to post military or
Oh,
military
cool.
related people. They do a lot of good things, but I do know that that's like a part of the thing every day they do that. But you know what? No, see, I don't. I like that. I respect it in that this is what you want to do. This is your place of business. This is what you want to represent. Do
Hmm.
it. A contract that anybody should have to do anything like that is not only is it bizarre, it almost seems illegal. It
Yeah,
almost seems like that should be illegal.
it kind of does. I mean, again, we know why it was done. It wasn't done for any purpose. I mean, if you think about what lawmakers are dealing with right now, whether it's post-COVID or the economy or immigration or all these things that are big deals, they took the time out of their day to do this. Come on,
Yeah,
seriously?
exactly. It just doesn't. It's just what's the point of doing it? Why are you focusing your energy on that? What would happen if somebody didn't do that? And who really cares? What would happen if somebody didn't play the national anthem at a ball game? Who really cares? If a sport announced that they were no longer going to do the national anthem at the top of an event, it would probably cause a huge, it would be gigantic. I mean,
Yeah.
think about the taking the
Mhm.
knee during the net. That's what I think is so funny. We live in a country where we have we have eras where punk rock is so cool and it's so cool to be rebellious, but there's like a time and place for it. Like almost everybody can bang their head to a Rage Against the Machine song, but if somebody wants to take a knee during the national anthem for some reason, then they are just the scum of the earth,
I know.
biggest dirtbag ever.
Yeah, it was that whole thing was just so bizarre. It was like I remember when it happened, and I wasn't surprised to see people get so upset about it. But if you think about it, if you really break it down, at least from my point of view, to me, it's so much more patriotic to do what he did than it is to say you have to sing the national anthem. I mean, he's
Yeah.
saying, look, there are American citizens that are fucking dying and no one's doing anything about it. You know, I need to make a statement. I mean, isn't that what, I mean, think about like the history of the country, at least in terms of like when white people came here and started this country, you know, it was all about, you know, giving the proverbial middle finger to the monarchy, right?
Right.
So the, you know, the powers. And so that's what Colin Kaepernick did. But that, because, you know, it ruffled some feathers, then people said, oh, he's not patriotic. And, you know, and it was he was a horrible person. And the fact that he's still not playing to this day, come on, man, he's one of the best quarterbacks, you know, in the past 10 years. Why isn't
Right.
he playing? You know why he's not playing.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I don't know the guy. I got respect for him for sticking up for his ideals and his beliefs, and I got no problem with him. I got more problem with someone telling someone they have to sing the national anthem than I do with that guy taking a knee. And you know the weird thing about the national anthem too, or just any stuff like that, like the Pledge of Allegiance or national anthem, is they also do. I think they do the pledge at like city council meetings. Because when I lived in Baltimore, I used to go to some of the city council meetings. And the one weird thing they did too was they would do a prayer. And now to me was like, this is inappropriate. And they would start it with a prayer, and people would stand up and they would do the prayer. And I think I stood up the first time, and then I was just like, I don't like this. If you want to pray, that's fine. Do it on your own fucking time. You don't need to do it here.
Wait,
But
so
I
was it
said,
like a memorized prayer?
no, I don't think so. If I remember correctly, I only went to a few of them, but every time I think it may have been a different prayer or something close to the
Right.
same prayer. But I didn't stand up one time. I just sat there, and I overheard someone behind me. He's like, "That boy doesn't want to stand up. He's just trying to prove." I don't know. She says, I just remember saying, "That boy doesn't want to stand up," or something like. And I just sat there, and I'm just like, "Yeah, so what do you care?"
Yeah.
You know, it's like
God.
I'm not religious. This means nothing to me. I'm here because I want to find out, you know, what's going on in the city, you know, in terms of, you know, what's happening with crime and what's happening with these redevelopment zones and stuff. That's why I was there, not to say a fucking prayer. You know, if you want to say a prayer, you can do it anytime. If you're, that's the weird thing too. When we talk about saying pledge allegiance in school, and people talk about prayer in school, and some people say, well, we need more prayer in school. Dude, you can pray anytime you want. You can
Yeah.
sit there and close your eyes and pray if you want. The fact that you don't need someone to like lead prayer in school. And now if you want to go to a religious school, you know, a Catholic school, whatever, that's part of the curriculum, that's fine. But when you're talking about public
Yeah.
school, that's tax dollar money. I don't know, man. It's a slippery slope. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that. The more we talk about it, it's like I'm not a fan of the prayer thing. I'm not a fan of the Pledge of Allegiance thing. I mean, I don't really, I don't see any value in it.
It's a distraction, and it gets people riled up and rallying behind something that is almost, it's so unimportant that it doesn't matter what side of the argument wins. You know, it doesn't even have really much of an effect outside of just making very little sense when somebody is condemned over it one way or the other. I don't know what I think about doing it on a mass level. Like, it would be weird, I guess, if schools just randomly started saying, "Hey, we're not going to do this." What do they do? Do they just say, would they just say, "Okay, we might continue to do the Pledge of Allegiance, but you don't have to say it. You don't have to stand up for it." So then you have kids are forced to form opinions about whether or not they want to do something. Like, what do you think? How do you handle that when something's been going on that, for instance, you don't feel that strongly, or I mean, you definitely don't feel strongly for the idea of this being a part of school, right? The Pledge of Allegiance. So what would your then solution be, you think?
Well, I think that may be the case now, because I do remember a while back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I remember reading an article about some state, I don't know, it was like Alabama or something, where someone didn't want to stand up and say the pledge and they got suspended. And I think this ACLU got involved, and they say you can't force someone to say the pledge. So um, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure that that's a case that a lawyer can win, saying you don't have to stand up and say the pledge. But you know, when I think about like the pledge, the time that people devote to like saying the pledge or wanting to have prayer in school, it's funny to me that that would be their priority. When I look at schools now, and I'm like, they're not getting they're not getting phys ed classes like they used to. They're not getting outside. They're not getting exercise. Gee, I wonder why I have an obesity problem. Well, it doesn't help that they go to the cafeteria, eat fucking sugary foods all day and have no phys ed at all. And then they go home and watch, play video games. So I'd rather see phys ed, more phys ed classes, or get it back, as opposed to saying the pledge or prayer. Or how about this? How about we get bring back funding for arts and music? Very, very important for the development of growing minds. Or how about this? Why don't we start teaching foreign languages at a younger age like they do in every other fucking country in the world? So when I go overseas, I don't feel like an asshole because I only know how to say, where's the bathroom, whatever country I'm in, because, I didn't start learning a foreign language until I was in college.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, what you're saying is right. You're looking at what the obvious problems are. I don't think that there's an obvious problem with whether or not you say the pledge. I don't see the effect. There's a grand effect of not knowing foreign language and then having no respect for the notion of foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you don't learn it at a young age, because it's not emphasized, there's just no respect for A, what it takes to learn one, and B, just the notion of trying to learn one. It just it really messes with the way people see it in this country in a totally different way than any other country probably.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I get how somebody could make an argument to not bend over backwards and accommodate for other languages and certain things, or prioritize other languages or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not like you can just expect somebody to learn a language that they, didn't grow up learning in any way. It's very difficult to take one on. So having that experience, and then, I mean, there's got to be a huge intelligence edge, just in addition to learning a second language that may or may not come in handy. I mean, talk about, I bet you the types, if you did studies, that there are things that would come from that skill. There, you would test the kids who grew up learning a second language throughout elementary school. They're going to do better in something at some point in time, test-wise, in high school. I'm sure that instills some sort of values in you as a kid, study-wise. I'm
100%,
sure.
100%. And there's not only from just respecting that, the only country in the world is not the United States. There actually is proof that if you learn a language, a second language at a young age, it's much easier for you to learn other foreign languages as you get older. A few people I know that started early, they speak multiple languages, 3, 4 languages.
Wow.
I know, right? I have a friend who speaks 8 different languages, and not just like easy one. He speaks fucking Mandarin, and Russian. It's like, it's not just, I learned Spanish and French. Not that they're easy, but I'm just saying, like, he speaks a lot of tough languages. I will have to say, though, that one advantage to not speaking a foreign language was I used it as an excuse many years ago to meet this German girl. Who was a German exchange student, and I was like, I'd love to learn German. I really didn't care, but she was
right.
Right? And it's funny because I ended up dating her for a little bit. Beautiful, beautiful girl, and it's funny we're talking about. I was just thinking about this the other day because a friend, this girl I dated many years ago, reached out to me on Facebook. Hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while, and we were talking, and I remember I remember dating her. This is a really interesting story. I'll try to make it fast.
You're
so,
good.
I remember dating her, and she was Jewish. I'm Jewish, but I haven't dated a lot of Jewish girls. Not for any particular reason. It's just kind of how it turns out. I just like women. I don't really care where the fuck they come from.
Right.
And I remember she was like, everything about her was like, any decision she made was based on whether or not someone or something was anti-Semitic or could be indirectly related to anti-Semitism. So it was really bizarre. So I remember, when you date someone and you start talking about, other relationships you've had and all that kind of stuff. So we were talking about that. I said, oh yeah, there's this one girl I dated, this girl Annika, and she was from Germany. She was great. We had a short-lived relationship, but we were always friends and everything. And it was funny. As soon as I said Germany, she's like, oh, Germany, really? Like I could tell, like she was bothered by the fact that she was German, right? And she kind of like half jokingly said, was she like a Nazi or something? Like tee-hee? Like I'm like, well, that was like, a very long time ago. Like Nazis aren't really a thing anymore. Like we won that war, like that got dismantled. So it's kind of joking about it. But then I said, interestingly enough, her grandfather did make tools for the Nazis. Dude, she lost her mind. She's like, you dated someone whose grandfather was a Nazi?
Oh
I was
my
like, well,
God.
look, first of all, I don't think he was a Nazi. I think what happened was they came to his house. They're like, okay, you can make tools for the Nazi, for our soldiers, or you can die. You know what I mean? He's probably like, let me weigh my options. Yeah, I think I'll live. So I'll make tools. Yeah, cool. We'll do that. You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
it wasn't that cut and dry. And and she's like still like, she's like, how, that's just so disgusting, like how could you do that? It just really pissed her off. I said, well, she was really hot and she let me have sex with her. So and she goes that's disgusting. I said, what, the sex part or the Nazi part? She's like, the Nazi part.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that's an interesting when people get hung up on things so easily. I want to make it work with people like that a lot of times, where it's just like, I like you. I get that you generalize certain things or you hyper focus on one thing, but it's like, if you're going to get that hung up about somebody's grandparent, it's like, who are you? Who is your family? Do you not have a racist uncle? Do you not have
Oh
somebody
yeah, of
that's
course.
like,
Yeah.
you don't have friends that drive drunk and put other people's lives at risk all the time? You don't, you just, everybody you're attached to is cut from a holy cloth.
I know.
That one drives me nuts, man, because there's inevitable hypocrisy in it, whether or not it's specific to anti-Semitism. Like, there's definitely some sort of hypocrisy when it comes to suggesting that you should shun or hate or have prejudice against somebody for such an odd reason.
Right.
Is there even like lingering do you think that there's much lingering anti-Semitism in Germany? I visited Germany, Berlin, and like, not that you just expect to see people that are outwardly about everything. It just did not seem like the type of place that would be so like prejudice. It just didn't seem like a place that had much.
I mean, it exists. It's still
Yeah.
there, but they're very like, the German government is very like, they don't fuck around with that shit. So at a very young age in school, you learn about the concentration camps. You learn about World War II, and they learn at a young age so they can, I guess, know the truth. So if you compare it to here, so like when I was in high school, we learned that the Indians were savages. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Right.
that's not really how it worked. But anyway, so yeah, they have some pretty restrictive laws. Like if you even like throw up a Heil Hitler sign or something, like they'll fucking arrest you. Like they don't fuck around with that shit. They're like, we're
Wow.
not. Yeah, it's no joke, man. They don't fuck around with that shit at all. And it's weird because every country is entitled to its own deal, and maybe it's different because it happened in Germany. But I know that in this country, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is. I was telling her that it was a while ago. There's somebody had a German. It was like a World War II German imperialist flag or something. It's basically like a Nazi flag. It wasn't that far from my house, and they had it just like swinging in the wind. I was telling her about it. She's like, that should be illegal. That they shouldn't be able to put that up. And it's funny because to me, as a Jew, I'm offended by that, but I don't think it should be illegal. It's like, if you want to put that flag up, fucking go ahead. In fact, I prefer it because now I know like who the Nazis are. I
Exactly.
mean, like this way I know who not to fuck with and who I want to fuck with.
Yeah, because what do you just want people to hold their views in secrecy then? I doubt it's going to like spread like wildfire. Like if you go into a hip progressive town or city and you hang a Confederate flag out in your front stoop, it's not like all of a sudden in a week 20 people are going to have them, or it's like it's going to spread. It's just people are going to know that you're a person that supports that, and they're just going to judge you. And more than likely in that area, in that demographic, it's not going to go over well. It's not even like some power you have over somebody. More than likely it's going to get vandalized one night or
Right.
stolen or burnt or whatever anyway. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, obviously I don't know what I think about the idea of like being able to just maybe hang certain signs at your, I don't know what I think about like, oh, if I could just put like a swastika out on my front porch or something. I get how that might not be a good idea,
Right.
but I don't know what negative effect it really has as far as like that's worth strong legality. you can wear like clothing and stuff that aligns you to that stuff, right? And I don't know.
I mean, there's no law against it. I mean, I think that maybe if you own a business and, if I owned a bagel shop, and some dude comes in with a fucking swastika shirt on, I'd be like, yo, you got to go, because it's my business. I
Yeah.
don't want you here. But like just
You're walking into a bagel shop with
you're just asking for trouble, right?
yeah,
No, actually, come
wrong
on in. Let me
place.
serve you a bagel, right? I'm gonna fucking piss in it, We get
Yeah.
special lemon flavored cream cheese on there.
Look at the balls on that guy
I,
walking into a
I
bagel shop
know,
with a
right?
swastika. Come on.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know, man. It's like I said, I'm a big believer in the First Amendment, and just it's not always going to be easy to take. I mean, it's not. The First Amendment wasn't designed so you're going to like everything that people say or wear. Sometimes you're not going to like shit. That doesn't mean you can't. You get to tell them what to do or what to wear or what to put on their home if they own their home.
yeah.
You know.
So about patriotism, about this notion of the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, and all that. I guess a question that I'm curious of: where do you think or is there any sort of distinct allegiance among libertarians, as far as where do you think most libertarians would stand on topics like that? Do you think most are a little bit more laxed on being adamant about hardcore patriotism?
Oh yeah, I think well, whatever hardcore patriotism is. I mean, I guess it's hard to define, but I don't know any
Yeah.
libertarians that would back any situation where a person would be forced to recite a pledge or sing a national anthem. I mean, just in theory, it wouldn't make sense. Now, that's not to say some wouldn't, but it's kind of like you're kind of a poser, if you're like, I'm a
Right.
libertarian, but you have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Really?
Yeah, no, it's good because it finds something, all this talk about how strong of a divide and how different and how hard it is to define libertarianism. It's nice to find something that seems a bit universal that I think most libertarians would probably agree to each their own with things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big of a deal one way or the other. And that would probably be pretty, like you said, unified across the border. It would be pretty odd if you were a libertarian and overly concerned whether or not somebody did the national anthem at a sporting event. I mean, maybe if you were it would probably take like a strong connection to the military or something to really push you in that direction. I
Mm-hmm.
think to fall under that. That's definitely something that is probably pretty common among libertarians. Would just be, yeah, that's too much. That's not the type of patriotism, or that strong blind patriotism, or not being able to think critically about it and just being forced into this position is not what this country is about.
Mm-hmm. Well, it kind of reminds me of, when I was a kid, my mom used to tell me before I'd go out, she would always say, ask yourself this question: would my mom be okay with what I'm about to do? And she would put that in my head. Like, not that I always thought about it, but it was funny that she would always say that to me. I kind of feel the same way about libertarianism. It's kind of like, ask yourself this question, is what you're doing or not doing hurting anybody? No? Okay, so what's the problem?
Right.
I mean, that's just
Yeah.
how I see it. I mean, it isn't most people I know that are libertarian are kind of like, look, I just want to be left the fuck alone, and like, you do your thing, I'll do mine, and we'll get along fine. I'm not going to hurt anybody. You don't hurt me. We're good. Like, that's always been, to me, it's kind of been like the basic understanding. But again, why did we start kind of libertarian? Well, because we kind of figured out that not every person who is libertarian really embraces the philosophy of what it means to be a libertarian. And maybe I don't either. I probably don't, because there are certain situations where I don't have a problem with the government being involved in certain things, where some libertarians be like, well, that's, against the basic fundamentals of libertarianism. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think about that in terms of the environmentalism. I'm not really a big fan of mandates in ways to integrate things like clean energy or electric cars or things like that. I don't like the idea of mandates in any respect. But I haven't seen a situation where, for the most part, companies do the right thing when it comes to just taking care of the planet and the soil and the air and the water. And how do you keep, say, like a big industrial agriculture operation from poisoning the Mississippi? I mean, I don't know if those regulations are necessarily the best way to do it. I think there probably are better ways to do it. I think property rights is something you can look at in that respect. If you get all this stuff, if you put all this nitrogen to the Mississippi and it kills all these fish, well, who owns the Mississippi? I suppose the taxpayers do. So you're degrading something that the taxpayers own. So you owe me. You're destroying something that I am part owner of. Now, I don't know how you would integrate that. So right now we just have, we have regulations in place. And again, I think it sucks that we have to have regulation. I think we can be better than that. But I don't know, man. What do you think? How do you do, how do you approach these things? Because honestly, I know people who are libertarian that are just like, hey, it's supply and demand. Like, they need to get cheap food out, and that's what they do. And that's just what happens. Well, yeah. Okay. I get that. But what's the end result? It's like, okay, you're getting cheap food, but you're taking value away from other people, whether it be fish or clean
Yeah.
water or soil that you can grow things on 10 years from now, because it's not all depleted of its nutrients. There's a lot of things to consider. It's a bigger picture than just, moving money from point A to point B.
Yeah, no. Well, I think you brought up an interesting point right there. It's like, what effect does this have? So like if you're producing some sort of commodity, you're producing some sort of essential thing, but it's causing a great amount of damage, like you're saying, with whether or not you're getting a cleaner energy, the just in environmental awareness, trying to create laws for things like that. It sucks, because I just fall back to the point where I feel like most people create laws when it benefits something greater than the benefit of the law. The politicians, there is some sort of tie almost always to some company, whether, see, I don't know. It's hard. I wish I could give better examples, but I'm just always a little weary about why they make the law in addition to the morality of it all. Just like, for instance, do we go to war to end a crazy dictator, or do we do it because we might be able to benefit from this interaction in some way?
Well, we didn't answer that question.
Yeah. So if that's the answer to that question, I'm that pessimistic, skeptic sort of person, not necessarily over the top conspiracy person, but I'm always like, well, what is this really about? And it goes back to like, I'm all about trying to find a way to preserve and accommodate our, not just humans. It's so we take a step back from patriotism, and now we see all humans. And then we take a step back from that, we see all living things. And we take a step back from that, and we see the earth, and that's the widest scope maybe to have, is to weigh how everything affects everything, how we affect the trees, how we affect the quality of our air, how we affect so much, just whether it's the pollution or whatever it is, or different gases getting in the air, just the risks. I mean, how much of a risk is it to be like, I live right by APG, Aberdeen Proving Grounds. Like how big of a risk is some of the stuff that we have in these places that could just get out? Like, I don't know if that's the case here, but Peach Bottom, not that far from me, has a lot of stuff that I guess toxic is the word for it. Like,
So people don't know. So anyone listening doesn't know, Peach Bottom is a nuclear power plant in
yeah, I should say nuclear stuff like that. So when that kind of stuff, when you have that, whatever purpose it's serving, is it even worth the purpose it's serving, knowing the given risk? I think about that kind of stuff when I'm thinking about, like trying to have a humane or just sort of ethical view. And yeah, I do think obviously if our government's going to step in for anything, that's as good of any topic to step in on. Unfortunately, I don't know historically the types of people who get involved in this thing. It's just kind of like a crock of shit. Like, do you think Al Gore is an honorable spokesperson of his cause? Do you think he lives and breathes environmentalism?
I think he does, but he doesn't lead by example.
He doesn't lead by example. That's what I mean to
Yeah,
say. Does he
yeah.
lead by example? Did Arnold Schwarzenegger lead by example when he was saying some of the things he was saying about that sort of thing? And then driving around in the Hummer, it's just like it reminds me of the COVID. It's like the same cities in the same areas where you have these people who are adamantly trying to say that you should always wear your masks, always social distance, always do this. They're the ones getting caught at these parties and nobody's willing to lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably one of the worst things that you could have, is just so outwardly and obviously not leading by example, because that is a form of leading by example. So others don't need to do what they think is right.
Right. So let's back up a little bit though, because you mentioned the thing about like, if the government needs to come in and regulate certain situations. We talk about energy, and I can speak to this because I worked as an energy analyst for about 10 years. So when we think about oil, okay, oil is primarily used for transportation fuel. So sometimes people want to compare it to solar, wind. It's not the same thing. You have utility scale power and transportation fuels. Oil is primarily used as a transportation fuel. So then we have these things called electric cars, which are far superior in terms of like their efficiency, and they're cleaner. Even if they were to get all their power from coal, which does not happen anywhere anymore because coal has lost about 15 to 20% of its market share over the past 10 years. So even in that situation, the amount of energy expelled in an electric car is less than that of an internal combustion vehicle. In other words, when you put gas in a car, only is, I think, something like maybe 25% of that energy is remaining that actually moves the car. The rest is wasted, as opposed to an electric vehicle where it's something like 90%. So, I'm going to get off point a little bit here, but we talk about why these things exist. We have internal combustion vehicles that have been around for a long time. That technology is antiquated, and it's been antiquated for many years. We've had the ability to do this. We haven't moved forward in changing it because politics, the oil industry. Why would the oil industry do anything to risk the internal combustion engine? That's the bread and butter. So we talk about what does it cost when they say, like, for electric vehicles, we had the tax credit. It was like $7,500 national federal tax credit if you buy an electric car. So people went fucking crazy over that. Like, this is bullshit. Why should they get a special tax credit? Well, how much money does it cost, okay, to produce oil anywhere in the world and use oil as a transportation fuel to move our vehicles? Not only the damage that you do to the environment, which, I mean, there have been studies on this. It's trillions of dollars worth of damage to natural capital, which is things like, the water and plant life, and the movement of not the movement, basically, like, anything that we need to live is natural capital. Okay, we destroy the natural capital when we pollute it. In addition to that, which again, it could be trillions of dollars worth of damage, how much does it cost to protect the shipping lanes to move oil? Because Exxon doesn't have their own security force. You know what I mean? They do. It's called the United States Navy. And the Navy's out there protecting those shipping lanes, right? Who's paying for that? That is an indirect subsidy that we are paying. Or how many wars or how many situations have we been in from a national security standpoint where our enemies have been funded by oil money? There are a lot of hands in this pot here. So to say that, well, it's a free market and, oil is cheap and we should keep drilling. Well, why? Because you've been doing it for 100 years, because Exxon or whatever oil company says, we're not giving this shit up. And I get it, like, it's self-preservation for them. But as a person who gives a shit about the planet, as a person who doesn't like to be taxed to death, and definitely as a person who doesn't want my tax dollars going to, to make sure that oil companies can make a shit ton of money every year because they don't have to pay, or they're heavily subsidized across the world anyway, in a number of different ways. I guess my point is, the government has facilitated all this. So when we talk about the government stepping in to clean up the environment, but wait a minute, the government made it so that these companies could pollute the environment. And so it's another example of how maybe if the government just would have stayed back, and say, okay, fine. If you want to produce oil in this field, you can buy the property, because right now an oil company will lease that property, which means that they're leasing it. They don't own it. So they can completely foul it up. 30 years later, okay, we leased it, we're done. The government now owns it, still owns it, and the taxpayer's on the hook for cleaning it up. And you just destroy it all. They got their money, and we're stuck with, like, it's almost like you have a house and you rent that house out to a bunch of fucking meth addicts for 20 years, and you got the money from them, right? You got your rent, but after 20 years, the place has got black mold, dead bodies, whatever, you know what I mean? And you're stuck with something of a liability at that point. And all of this has been facilitated by government intervention.
It's a hell of a lot easier to have a strong opinion on whether or not you should take a knee in a football game than to figure out how to clean up this mess. And I think that is the biggest problem in politics. We just would rather, I think the people are too caught up on the simple, like the low hanging fruit of issues, because the stuff like you're presenting is so deep in corruption. It's so deep in undoing. It's hard. We're not one step away from fixing what you just said. This is layers and layers of something that you would have to undo or figure out. And there would be many, many, many forms of resistance along the way. But step one would be getting everybody on board and realizing what you're saying, right? Like it would have to try to find a way to get through to people. I don't mean to keep bringing up Al Gore, because he might that's like saying Caitlyn Jenner is the spokesperson of trans people. It's just not doesn't do them justice. But that documentary, that almost that Michael Moore style of outing things, it would probably take a lot of that sort of thing, popularized culture revolving around it. Maybe other countries leading the way. When other countries do it, when more countries start doing it, then maybe we would follow suit. But I feel like we're just a bit behind the curve, and we don't care to take a deep look into anything like you just said. Mm-hmm. And it's sad, because I didn't know every single thing that you said, but I had a hunch. I knew enough to know that was pretty much the case, that it's just tough, that there's tax money involved. There's big businesses involved. It's bigger than just what is the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And for the government, this goes back to, like I was saying, for the government to do something about it, it doesn't need to be the right thing to do for the world. It doesn't need to be the right thing to do for people in general. It doesn't even need to be the right thing to do for the people in this country. So even scaling back to a very ethical, patriotic sort of view, it only has to play benefit to them, their party, their voters, right? That's who you pander to. You get the votes, and then you play to the people that have their hand up your ass.
And here's the problem. As voters, we trivialize. I would say conservatives, mostly conservatives and Republicans, and to some effect, many libertarians, trivialize the value of the environment. So anytime you bring up something that's even remotely relevant to clean air or clean water or cleaner energy infrastructure, the immediate response is liberal, socialism, that kind of thing. And we buy into it. I love stand-up comedy. It's like one of my favorite things to do is sit and watch YouTube for hours just watching stand-ups. I love it. And there are a lot of comedians that will make fun of environmentalists. And I'm an environmentalist, and I think a lot of their jokes are fucking funny, and I laugh because I get it. It's a joke.
Right.
The problem is there's a lot of people that be like, yeah, they don't understand that it's a joke, and they play along, and then they hear, whatever Republican it may be saying something similar, mocking environmentalism. And in all fairness, Democrats aren't they're not doing anything great for the environment either. It's like they claim to be more environmentally aware than Republicans, but it's like you said, lead by example. How many Democrats in office are always talking about climate change? How many have an electric car? 2, if we're lucky, or how many of them buy their food from a local organic farm instead of an industrial agriculture? Again, lead by example. That's why I don't fucking believe any of these guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's even more so. I get more upset, I think, at liberal Democrats because they're talking a good game, but they don't live up to it. I don't expect Ted Cruz to wake up one morning and be like, I care about climate change. I know he's a dick, okay? I know he doesn't care. And, he's just getting paid to do that. I get it. I know what I'm dealing with that guy. But,
Yeah.
with Democrats, they're always quick to talk about climate change when they're trying to get elected. And then they say, well, this is what we're going to do, to make sure that, we can clean up the environment. And what does it always boil down to? It's like more tax dollars, more government mandates. Again, yeah. I would be the happiest person if you could, that would be the rule. Okay. So from now on, any lawmaker that says that climate change is an issue, they have to have an electric car. Like right now, get yourself an electric car, and all your food has to come from a local organic farm. Those 2 things. If you don't do those 2 things, then you're full of shit. You're no better than Ted Cruz.
Exactly. No, because what are you doing? You're just pandering to the people and not to what you believe in, and you're not standing up for what you believe in. Leading by example, it makes obvious sense. You should 100% be that way. I've had this conversation many times, and it's funny you brought up the hyper liberal people who want to crucify everybody for doing every single thing, and I have some very outspoken vegan friends who claim XYZ. It's like, dude, talk to me when you stop flicking your cigarette butts in the street. talk to me when you stop doing that. Then we'll have a conversation about it. I don't care. I don't respect your way. You don't follow suit. I don't have any respect for your views if you don't live by them. They are not your views. Tell me what's really going on, right? That's how I see it. I think that way about a lot of things. You got to be careful the types of people you're going to crucify. You got to be careful, like that. It's just inevitably hypocritical. And I get it when you don't have a fucking thing going for you, right? I get that you can't seem to string together the energy and the means to be the person who's buying the right sourced foods, that's doing all this, or maybe you can't really live up to being the person that you feel like you're supposed to be because you just can't do shit. You're just stuck in your bedroom, depressed, not even able to find a job, whatever. But these people that are high up in politics, number one, why did you get into politics? If not to stand up for these things that you feel like need change, and you want to be that role that people can sort of be inspired by. Why did you get into politics? And now that you have the means, now that you probably have the money, you clearly have the reason for it. Like, hey, I know a lot of people that are potheads, but when they get the job where they get drug tested, they're no longer potheads, dude. Like, this is your job. This is your life. You're a politician that is lobbying for the notion of green energy, whatever, all these sorts of things. And then you're out doing what? It makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. I don't get it.
I mean, it's just, it goes down to what their, like you said, what's their motivation? And even if they are legitimately concerned about those things, it like you were talking about respect. I can't really respect someone who talks about things that they want to do. Well, I don't say respect them, but it's like, you can't take those people seriously. Like, I want to do this, or I want to do that, but you never actually make an effort to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I know how many bands I had been in my life, and all the shitty music I made, and like all the things I did. And, it's like, I wanted to be a musician. So I made it happen. and it's the truth for anything. And so if someone comes up I remember this one guy after I got off the road and I moved on and started doing the analysis thing. This guy's like, oh, he's like, so you're back in finance. I said, yeah. He's like, oh, the music thing didn't work out, huh? And I was like, fuck you. I'm like, first of all, it did work out because for 6 years I fucking toured and made money doing what I love, shared the stage with some really awesome musicians who I've admired for years. I've toured, I put out records, video, you know what I mean? It's just like, fuck you. What have you done? It's like,
Yep.
Imagine you're at the gym, right? And you're rolling and like some dude comes walking in who's like, I don't know, just like the dude that works at Whole Foods, who's, proud to be a vegan, and comes in and he's like, hey dude, your arm bar is all it's wrong. Like you got to do, like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I got that the other day. I had my last tournament. I hit 3 chokes that are this. It doesn't really matter for it's just a way of pinning somebody and basically crushing the air in their lungs so they can't inhale. So instead of windpipe choking somebody, instead of cutting off both carotid arteries, you're compressing their lungs and you're pinning them in a way where they can't catch a breath in. And the more energy they're using, the more oxygen they're burning up, trying to escape, the harder it is. And if you time this pin when somebody's already tired, I mean, they need that breath of air. Some of them can barely survive with the full breath of air, let alone a quarter breath of air, whatever. So it doesn't even need to be a full choke. And I posted these videos, and this one guy who I know who owns a school tagged this other person. So it's like a string of things. But so this owner of a school who's a jiu-jitsu black belt, judo black belt, loves this choke, and he saw me do it. He tagged a guy who I guess is adamantly against this choke or doesn't think it should work or whatever. And he goes, hey, my friend Mike Turpin hit this choke 3 times in the advanced expert division. This guy right here is a black belt who owns a school. This guy's this. Like, what do you have to say about it? And he goes, well, it shouldn't work. And if he tried that on a judoka, they would just do this. And he like drew arrows on a picture showing me the way I could get bridged across the body. And by the way, it's like the most rudimentary, like, analysis of applying physics and leverage. Like, I would never make it to where I am in jiu-jitsu if I didn't know that somebody could potentially bridge me in the direction that he pointed, right? So like, it was just so stupid. It was a dismissal of anything I might know. It was a dismissal of what I might be doing and the ways I can make this choke work that you don't think it would. And I told him, I was like, hey, it's very easy to see what might work, but it's extremely humbling to find out what will. Mm-hmm. Anybody can watch a fighter, a boxer, and be like, he's fighting with his hands down. He's got his chin up. He's got this. Yeah, easier said than done. Remember that. Go in the cage, close the door, and keep your hands up. Keep your chin down. Good luck.
Yeah.
Have fun out there, slugger. Go get him. You're going to kill that guy. Look, he's got his hands down.
Dude, it's always like that, man. We were talking about that last week. Was like some people that love, watch sports and they think they know everything. And they're like, why didn't he do that? Or why didn't he, do this? If he would have done this, this would have happened. I'm like, the fuck do you know? Like, again, it's like, unless you do it, unless you actually do it and you have some expertise in it, it's like, you can say what you want, but like, I'm not going to take it seriously.
Yeah. Man, it's, I go back to, I talk to my buddy a lot about things. He theorizes about a lot of things and he's in his own head all day. And it's like, I don't like to just think about things. I like to do them. At the very least, I want to be active and have a more physical approach to my life. I like to be involved and experience the things that I think about. I like to see things through. And I'm that person. It's like, you got to live the experience of being in a band. It's like, what's the end game? You could have been 20. There are bands that are 20 times more successful than Dog Fashion Disco was, right? And they still break up and those members still get normal jobs. And that guy could still look at that guy and say, hey, guess that band thing didn't work out. And then like we talked about money. Well, what do you,
Right.
just because one band made more money, do you think they had more fun than Dog Fashion Disco did? Probably fucking not. 9 out of 10 bands, even if they were making more money or had more success in some way, I mean, I saw bands all the time. To have the cult following you guys did, where everybody who was there, that was their favorite band. You were the type of band where that was people's favorite band. That stood out where it could be somebody's favorite thing to be involved in. And the people just don't know the balls it takes to be that different, to go out there and lay it all on the line, to be criticized the way that you're criticized for following a life and following your dreams. And they can just dismiss it with one fucking sentence. And they didn't even ask you, hey, did you at least like doing it? Did you have fun? Are you happy now? They're just looking for that negative thing. I don't know if you know the name Daniele Bellali, but he was a guest on Rogan a bunch, and he has a podcast called the Drunken Taoist podcast, and he has another one called History on Fire. So he has a history podcast. Well, he's a really cool guy. The one podcast, he talks about Taoism a lot. I mean, it's not like the only thing, but, kind of like we're kind of libertarian. That's a kind of Taoist perspective podcast, but he's a cool dude. And he went on and on about it one time. It's like somebody told him, they were like, you're so lucky. You study martial arts. You teach a class a little bit. He's a professor, but it's not like all his main thing. You do these podcasts. You write these books. Like, you're living the dream. You're so lucky. And he's like, luck had nothing to do with it. I put myself in this position intentionally, and I worked my ass off for it, and I'm still working my ass off for it. And at the end of the day, I might not even fully see it through. Like, I might only be able to have the energy to do these things for a few more years, for 5 more years. Like, eventually I might just hang up the gloves. But yeah, I'm doing what I want to do, and it did nothing about luck. It's just about moving forward, and whether or not you make it to the level you did in music, whether or not you never make it past the open mic, or whether or not you become gigantic, that is not the only measure of success in your journey. I never was a big enough stand-up comic where I would potentially be in the runnings to have some sort of special somewhere or go on a tour headlining clubs. But for me, I got to be a sitting comic on the local radio station. I got to be on 98 Rock a bunch. Like, that was cool shit for me. I got to do this, but is that making it? I mean, for what I wanted, I was more than happy to put enough energy into stand-up to only get that out of it. Did I make enough money to make a living on it? Absolutely not even close. I even produced shows where you were making money, but it's still, I would have had to do a lot more effort. And again, you're not getting paid to do stand-up. You're getting paid to put on shows. So that's a different business than what I necessarily wanted to do. But like you said, it's, you got to do what you love to do. And people don't understand that, who don't pursue their loves. They don't pursue their dreams. They just see it. They see it through the lens of whether it's the amount of money you make, the status, maybe you don't make a ton of money, but you're a doctor. Maybe or a lawyer or whatever the title is. Because something I've learned being blue collar, damn, there's a lot of successful blue collar guys.
Yeah.
Holy shit, I had no idea. Like, my landscaping boss, he doesn't have multiple crews. He doesn't have a whole, like, we do all the work, me and him. He has it going on. His boy's done private school. He's got an amazing house. He had enough funds. So a few years ago, he opened up a gym that's just kind of like his retirement goal. He's just going to own a gym, and he's slowly building that business, and he's got it going on. He has a great business, and it's through landscaping, something you just don't think of as, that guy might make more money than a lot of people who have master's degrees and doctors.
Does. Yeah. I think people don't think about that too much either. It's the, you brought up a good point though about, I think that people that really work hard and achieve some level of success, whatever that success may be, because it's really subjective. You know, I think that those people don't let the haters bring them down. You know, like no matter
Yeah.
what, because listen, no matter what you do, if you ever put yourself out there, someone's always gonna like have a reason to like come at you for something. Even so, just the other day, I wrote an article about, would it be actually I'm trying to remember the title of it. It was something like, could psychedelic medicine have helped DMX or something like that? The idea being that he struggled with addiction for like 30 years. And there's a lot of really cool research being done right now with ibogaine and psilocybin in terms of treating people with addiction. And there's really great anecdotal evidence right now, and some of it's going into phase 1 FDA trials. And, it was basically, I wasn't saying that it would have saved his life. My point was, if we had this medicine out there available for people today, there are a lot of people who have addiction problems that could benefit from it. I mean, we know this based on some of the early evidence we've seen in ibogaine studies and psilocybin studies. And this person, their comment was, "This is stupid. Psychedelics would not have saved his life." Okay, hey, did you read the article? And my response was simple. I'm like, and I responded to the guy. I said something like, well, that was rude. What about it? What about the article didn't you like? And then I didn't hear anything back. I mean, I will like if someone comes at me, like especially in this case, I want to start a dialogue because I'm very passionate about the idea that this could be really important medicine. So I want to help get that information out there. In which case, I will respond to that tweet, or I think it was a message from like a stock bulletin board or something, or a stock picks bulletin board. But again, like you can't be just distracted, by
Right.
people that are telling you what you're doing is wrong. Because if you do that, you'll never get anywhere. If you listen to everybody that tells you you're going to fail, then you're going to fucking fail. No doubt about it.
I think this goes back. I'm probably going to say this quote more than any quote ever, and an unnecessary amount, but it just comes back to not being able to see the forest for the trees. This person has a hang up with the suggestion that psychedelics could have possibly changed DMX's path and demise and addiction leading to death. Just because you suggest something, I mean, but what things are definitive? I mean, is chemotherapy a definitive cure for cancer? Is surgery a definitive cure for back pain? Is anything definitive like that? There's so much probability and so much mild chance with things we hold stock in. But then we're going to criticize and damn and call something stupid, like what you're saying, that actually has a ton of anecdotal evidence. And you know what? I think one of the least talked about anecdotal evidence that comes down with psychedelics and addiction is, not only do I think people who turn their lives over to psychedelics for help with addiction, especially with that intention, not only do they usually get a great reward. I mean, even if 10% of the times it helped, things like ibogaine, it's probably a pretty high percentage. But even if you roll the dice and say, you know what, I want to just experience something spiritual, I'm going to have a large mushroom dose, I'm going to go and do an ayahuasca ceremony, whatever you're going to do. A lot of people cure addiction this way. One-time thing. They at least have a strong sense of, oh my God, I should not be doing this, right? The thing that people don't even talk about is like, it's actually a lot of people who struggle with addictions that are afraid to face the mushroom experience, are afraid, like a lot of people who have issues with pills and drinking and all that, a lot of them are kind of scared of what's going to happen. It's like they already know they're about to face the fact that they're an addict and have to come to terms with it and try to come out on the other side.
Some
Yeah.
ass demons.
So I think there's a lot of very good circumstantial, anecdotal evidence out there on top of the evidence that has probably been a bit more calculated, and at least something that holds more obvious scientific merit. There's already some merit to psychedelics and being that scientifically or in a more proven method, a scientific method. But there's a lot when you really look into it. What a potential thing for somebody to say, oh, you're being stupid. Like it totally dismisses everybody that's ever had their life changed from something like that, which is so common, so common. So many people say that, you know?
Well, you know what's stupid is the fact that addiction is not new. We've been dealing with this for decades, and it's been getting worse and worse and worse as the years go on. What's stupid is we don't have any new or better treatments for addiction. You know, we have,
Yeah.
you know, the 12-step programs, which I think have about a 30% success rate. And I'm not criticizing them because they've worked for a lot of people, and that's awesome. And then you have like things like methadone and Suboxone that are just like, well, you're just trading one addiction for another. You're not really fixing the problem. And then there's a company called Universal Ibogaine that has a clinic in Mexico because, of course, in this country, we're not allowed to use it. So we have to travel to Mexico to get better, which, you know, again, is like another damning result of, you know, government interference in the war on drugs. But anyway, Universal Ibogaine, they've treated something like, I want to say like 1,500 people in the past 20 years at this clinic. They have something like a 90% success rate.
Whoa, that is insane. Because I thought 30% sounded pretty good. When you
Yeah,
said it, that, I was like, you know, 30% is not bad, but that is insane.
yeah, it's fucking nuts. Or if you look at the Hopkins did that the study in 2018 on smoking cessation, and they used psilocybin therapy. It was a small group, but after a year later, 80% of the people had still not smoked. So it cured, at least for that first year, 80%. And again, there's a medication that's FDA approved on the market now, again, has about a 30% success rate. And Hopkins showed on this first study an 80% success rate after the first year. I mean,
Yeah.
even these are early studies. If I had an addiction that I thought was going to kill me, of course I would seek out something that has that could potentially save me. And the fact that the only way I can get that is to go through a controlled study that's approved by the government or leave the country, that is a slap in the face. You want to talk about, you know, being unpatriotic? How unpatriotic is it to put up walls so that people in this country, citizens who are struggling with addiction, can't get the help they need? That's one of the most unpatriotic things you can do.
Yep.
Compare that to saying, well, you have to sing the national anthem. Fuck you. That's bullshit.
The,
Get me
the
fired up,
only
Mike.
the only thing, for people who don't realize too, the only thing that methadone is essentially a different name for heroin. It might as well, it's not the same drug, right? But as a matter of fact, a lot of people who have been addicted to both say methadone was harder to come off, that methadone was a harder withdrawal, was more difficult for them to quit, people who've seen it through on the other side. So you basically are saying they might as well just be regulating heroin and saying, hey, if you're a heroin addict, instead of going out there and potentially shooting something you didn't shoot, you getting fentanyl, instead of messing up your veins, doing your own injections and all this, instead of just going off the deep end and doing way too much, you're allotted a daily dose. Maybe you come by a few times, you get your fix, you go. That's essentially what they're doing. They might as well just do it with heroin at that point. It really makes no difference whether or not it's methadone. So that is a viable option. Meanwhile, there's almost no recreational merit to this Ibogaine. There's almost no, so much
Not
so
gonna do
that
Ibogaine for
psychonauts,
fun.
yeah, like a psychonaut, somebody like me who would like the notion, like I enjoy the idea of going through the experience. You would have to really convince me that I needed this Ibogaine experience for me to do it. And I'm somebody who would like to see something like that through. I'm a glutton for the idea of it going through the experience of what might be this potentially beneficial thing, but it's essentially nearly or about 24 hours of an intense experience, and it's not overly feel good. It's kind of difficult. You go through a lot of abstract feelings and visuals, and it's intense, and it's kind of like a purge of negative past things that seem to revolve around addictive personalities. It seems to be, I don't know many other benefits of Ibogaine, but it really seems like if it's not for addiction, don't do it.
Right. Well,
But what a positive thing.
the thing about Ibogaine is what it really does is it allows you to detox without going through withdrawals. That's the main thing it does. So when you get done Ibogaine treatment, you no longer have that chemical dependence on whatever it was you were addicted to. Now, Ibogaine doesn't work for anything. There's some drugs that it doesn't work with. I don't know which ones they are. I forgot, but it's not for everything. And if not done, you have to do it in a safe place because there are risks. There are some heart risks to doing Ibogaine if you're not in a certain, I don't know. A doctor has to, like, if you go down to this clinic in Mexico, you can't just show up. Like, you have to take a physical. You have to meet with the doctor to make sure that you nothing bad's going to happen to you if you take it.
Yeah.
But the idea being that it gets the detox part done. Now, that doesn't mean you're always going to be cured. You can go back. Whatever brought you to addiction, that could bring you back to addiction. You could go back to your community and see your buddies shooting up and be like, man, I used to have fun doing that. And then you just do it once and you're hooked again. So it's not a cure-all, but the idea that it has been dismissed for so long when nothing else really works that well, if at all. Why would you not consider that?
Yeah. And the other potential side of it is whether or not there's this physical side that allows you to not experience the withdrawal. There's also a psychological side to it where you heavily see the other side of addiction typically in these experiences. Even like, a large mushroom dose might psychologically change your view on your own addictions to the point where, yes, you could get back to it. Yes, you could, whether it's peer pressure, influence, environment, negative situations in life, just the person that you are. There are other reasons, though, that psychedelics might be a stronger permanent effect or have a better chance of you not succumbing to these sorts of things due to the way that it psychologically changes you, outside of just going through the physical withdrawal. Or skipping that process. I mean, it is it could really align you with the person that you feel like you should be being. Not to go too, just keep to go too deep in the psychedelic thing, but it's like, if you know that you're juggling with this addiction and you're not facing it, you have now faced it full bore when you enter the psychedelic headspace, and you're no longer divided between the person that you think you should be you decide to be the person that you've been on the inside this whole time, telling yourself not to do it anymore. You should quit, or maybe next week or whatever, you keep pushing it off. And
I think that one of so my experiences with psychedelics are limited. I have not done them a lot, but I've done them enough to know the experiences. And one thing I can always say about psilocybin is, I always feel like it's helped me become a more truthful person. Not that I go around lying to people, but sometimes I don't say things like, instead of like piping up, I just don't say anything because maybe I don't want the confrontation or something. Whereas like after maybe like I do, a few months of microdoses, or maybe I just had a really great, like one day I just took, 5 grams or whatever, and I just had a really great journey. I noticed something in my brain, in that it's almost like when I want to tell the truth about something, I always stop myself first before I say anything or before I write anything. And when I do that, it's like that border is gone. And it's not in a way that I would say anything mean or disrespectful. It's just, and it could just be about myself, like being truthful about myself, about something that I'm doing. It's just like my go-to is typically to beat around the bush of truth.
Yeah.
But I know when I'm microdosing, or if I after maybe, and this will last for months after I have a psilocybin journey, that I'm into that truth mode,
Yeah.
and boy, it feels fucking good, man. It feels great.
What better feeling? You're not at turmoil. You're not divided. You're not caught up being the projection and the person separately.
Mm-hmm.
It's all one thing. It's just, there's no facade. It comes back to that, like when people are speaking in a cadence, when they're being inauthentic, when they're running things through that filter of trying to appease the people that they're talking to or for, it immediately makes it, disingenuous. It immediately adds that. Now, you can say that there are times to have white lies. You can say that there are times where it makes sense to be this way. But at the end of the day, it feels really good to be comfortable not being that way. And it's one thing to flip the switch on when you have to. Oh, I'm around grandpa, or, oh, I'm around this, I'm going to bite my tongue. I'm not going to try and be confrontational with this person, or there's no getting through to this person. I'm just going to, whatever. I've tried, I've been down that road, but you are doing it you are satisfied with your decision, and you are satisfied with your sense of self when you're carrying it that way, as opposed to more so getting caught up in just running everything through that filter. You catch yourself on a date and you might want to, for me, I have to remember the way I was when I was younger, when you inevitably want to do that. Like, you want to impress your older brother, so you lie and say you kicked some kid's ass who shoved you and punched you, or whatever. You make up a lot of stories. You pretend you've been with more girls you've been with. You pretend these sorts of things. You lie about all sorts of things. And you don't realize how many people still lie about those things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have many of those things anymore. I've really tried to come to terms with a lot of the things that maybe, especially from my youth insecurities, that I continued lying about into my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a really good job of just not doing that. And I would say psychedelics helped me. That was like a big final hurdle in that. And then to face my insecurities more directly. I used to be severely overweight. I went the route where I no longer had to be insecure. I no longer wanted to wear like a tight shirt under a baggy shirt, or do all of these little tricks. Whatever. You see it like people who make a dating profile, they want to post a picture that makes them look thinner than they are.
Right.
Yeah, they feel uncomfortable about that. That's uncomfortable to know that people are looking at you, and they're looking at a thing that's going to give them the wrong impression of you, and they're going to have to fight. That's already a level of anxiety to process. Just knowing that you put out photos that make you look better than you actually look.
Right.
That you're running everything through a filter, and you're covering it up, and you're whitening your teeth and smoothing out all your blemishes and making yourself look like a deer, or, that is there is a level of weight that you are carrying by making those decisions that we don't have to carry. And it feels good to not carry it. It feels good to just be you, and to just be honest, and try to be considerate. And yeah, it's not as simple as just not lying. It's not as simple as that. There's gray area. There's gray area with everything. Balance is so crucial, but it feels so good to not have to have these insecurities or ego issues where we need to rely on deceit, or we just decide to manipulate others. We just decide to be manipulative for our own gain.
And that's just a common thing. I mean,
so common.
It's almost ingrained, especially in work life, because you always want to put yourself in a situation where people think that, like, oh, they need me, as opposed to being like, well, maybe they need you because you're good at what you do. It's I struggle with that too. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time as working as a financial analyst, and I've done very well. I made a lot of people a lot of money, and every single day I struggle with, if I made a recommendation that stock is down, or I don't have a degree in finance, am I imposter? That whole imposter syndrome. I do struggle with that. I'd be lying if I say I didn't. Interestingly, though, when you talk about the dating profiles, so I'm my wife and I have recently separated, and we're great and we get along great. But at some point, I'm going to want to start dating again. And I think I'm going to go on a dating site, but I'm going to take the ugliest pictures of myself. Like right after I work out, just my face, my hair all disheveled and like all gross. And just like the ugliest pictures I can find. And that way, like when I meet the woman in person, she'll be like, oh, you look really good. And I'd be like, oh yeah. Look at that person.
Yeah, dude, no, honestly,
low. If you set the bar low, you'll be fine.
That is the way to go. You're going to be so confident knowing that they're into the version of you that you just projected. Like, I remember one time I had one of those apps. Like, I actually had a really great relationship that we met on a dating app. So I just don't have the time and energy for them all the time. And sometimes it's nice meeting people in your own whatever, but like, I think it's a great idea. I don't think it's silly. I think it's an awesome way to interact with people and meet people, but it's so nice to do that. But I like to give out a little bit of the insecurity. Like, I'm awkward when I first meet somebody, and like, I don't like make the first move well. I get nervous about like not wanting to make somebody uncomfortable. And if they don't let me know, obviously, that they're into me, it's like, oh, well, I don't know how this is going. And what do I do? Do we like small talk? Do we just go, or do we go really deep into something? Do we just, oh, it's tough, man. I overthink it, you know? Of course, everyone would say, oh, that's just classic overthinking, but I really take it far. So I just say something that I feel pretty confident on. Well, I know that's the hardest phase of talking to me. So my dating profile says, if you can get past the extremely awkward part, I'll probably surprise the hell out of you. Yeah, that's good.
That is
good.
Good.
It's going to be a little awkward. It's going to be a little weird at first, but once you get past that, I'm going to probably be shockingly smooth or good once we know that we're good and like each other. Once we both know there's chemistry. Once we've both, I'm like, that first time of everything is always a little awkward.
Right.
But if you address the elephant in the room, it's no longer the case.
Dude, sometimes just saying like just being awkward, or even not even being awkward, but just I have a weird sense of humor that doesn't really work with a lot of women. You know, they're trying to come up by it. So I try to use that sense of humor early on to gauge whether or not they're going to be into me. Because if a woman thinks that like I have a really horrible sense of humor, it's not going to work. Yeah, it's just not. I know it won't. I accept that. But I'll never forget this, being on the road. It was in Minnesota. We played this show, and after the show, there was in the green room, there were a lot of people there. We were playing with Nothing Face at the time, so there's a lot of people there.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I was talking to this woman who was like, you know, kind of cute, and I was talking to her, and she was kind of digging me, you know, like I felt like I was getting a vibe from her. I was like, cool. So I said to her, hey, listen, do you want to go back to your place and listen to records and not make out? Like, just joking.
Yeah.
And she just started busting out laughing. She's like, yeah. I was like, we went back to her place, and we did make out and did listen to records, and it was fun. But like, I guess it was kind of like that is not a line that would typically work, you know, with anyone who would have a sense of humor that isn't aligned with mine. But the fact that she thought that was funny and kind of stupid, like, you know what I mean? Like, It made, as soon as that happened, it was like, it made life so much easier for the rest of the time I was with her, because it's like, oh, I don't have to do anything anymore. Like, I don't have to hide who I am, you know?
Exactly. No, you're right. There's a comedian. He's kind of a local comic, but he does do like national stuff, and he does like a lot of like stuff overseas when they send comics out to you know, I don't know, they do a lot of that kind of stuff for overseas for like troops and stuff. But regardless, he has a joke about how, his name's Rob Mayer. He has a joke about how he tells women that he has a small penis. You know, because it's like, if they're willing, you know, then they start thinking about it. I'm like, I wonder if he really does. So like, do you really have a small penis? You know, he's like, well, I don't want to talk about it too much, whatever. Next thing you know, he's like, he said, that was the greatest like strategy for getting, this isn't he actually has funny punchlines with it, but the whole point of it wasn't, and I've had a conversation, he goes, no, dude, when I tell you I am being dead serious, I started saying that because, I mean, I don't know, it was just got the ball rolling, and not every girl, but he's like, I would be talking to girls and I would say it, and you wouldn't believe how many would like get my number, would like go out of their way to throw themselves on me after that. And he's like, you know, I just figured I can't disappoint them at that. I mean, that side of it's not going to disappoint them. And he was like, to be honest, it's average. You know, he's like, so it's like, yeah, you're a little better than what you say. It's just like you post the pictures that are a little uglier than you are, or whatever. And, you know, you said the thing about making out, and it's such a lighthearted joke that it's not creepy. You're not like saying anything too insane, you know, and it's that reverse of it. So instead of being the creeper, you're almost intentionally not. Like, similarly, it's funny to tell a girl and be like, look, I'm not just looking for a hookup. I don't want to be treated like a sex object. Like, to turn the tables, because all girls are used to guys who do that.
Right,
So just
right.
turning the tables a little bit, it's like, I don't, I'm not just looking for anything meaningless. I'm tired of girls just constantly seeing me as this object to say. It's funny, but that kind of stuff does work, and it addresses certain insecurities, and it addresses elephants in the room, and it makes it easier. I don't know. It's cool to be honest about things like that in a quirky, funny way. And yeah, you're right. It's nice to do it. What brings us together better than laughter? When you meet somebody who doesn't speak English very well, what can you share together that is just inevitable? You guys can make each other laugh just by the way you look at each other, just by the facial expressions, just being in the room, witnessing something funny. There's nothing like laughing with somebody.
Or you could just listen to her talk about how her grandfather worked for the Nazis. Then you can use it for a punchline as a joke for the girl later that you hook up with, mostly just to get on her nerves.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, it's weird that we need to come up with these sort of psychological strategies or ways of being to curb these insecurities and hangups that we all have, or bizarre sorts of manipulative patterns and addictions and things that we hide, like we talked about in the one episode about like people who like what percentage of people probably carry these demons that are like extreme perversions. Yeah. So much so that all of the porn we watch is perverted in some way, in incest, in this. It's like, man, what percentage of people are carrying insane stuff on the inside? And not that I don't know what would happen about being honest with that, but like, hey, what do they say? What's the first step in 12 steps? Admitting you have a problem.
Oh, is that
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure that's the first step, is you have to admit you have a problem.
Right.
And yeah, man, getting things out there, saying these things that you bottle in makes you come to terms with it in a more objective way.
So basically the moral of the story is, if you want to impress the ladies, just do a lot of psychedelics. Yes. And then you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I think the trick is to be on the other side of it though too. Like, I think the best trick is to be like, yeah, I don't do that stuff anymore, but I used to do a lot of, like that. Then girls are like, they think it's cool. They don't want to know like, yeah, yesterday or yeah, this upcoming weekend, I think I'm going to trip with my buddies. They're like, whoa. Yeah. Visit the other plane, come back, and then meet women. You'll be, no, it's interesting. You definitely understand the way people think more. You understand the way you think more, and you probably come up with more creative strategies of how to be yourself and mingle and not be so damned uncomfortable and succumb to dishonesty, Yeah,
because it's easy to fall into that. Like we said, it's easy to fall into that trap of being dishonest, because so many people, and including myself, it's easier sometimes to be dishonest with people than it is to be honest, especially when you first meet them. Because if you're trying to impress somebody, and like I said, I mean, I'm kind of at a point in my life where I'm not trying to really impress anybody. Like I feel pretty confident in like the things I've accomplished in my life. There are other things I want to accomplish in my life, and hopefully I get to them. But in terms of like meeting women, it's like that I don't have the energy anymore like I did when I was in my early 20s to like put on a show. It's like,
right.
I'm old. When I scratch my balls, it looks like I'm scratching my ankle. That's what happens when you get old,
Yeah. Hey, it's this has been a great kind of libertarian, kind of dating for people on the spectrum.
So we're basically we're gonna end it on scratching my balls near my
ankle. Down by your ankle. Yes.
I did that
using your balls to scratch your foot.
I did. I actually was joking with this woman. I was at a party and there was this woman there, and I was itching my ankle, and I kept itching it. And she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "My balls itch." and everyone laughed except her, and she was like, "Oh," and she like walked away. I was like, "Well, I guess we're not gonna hang out."
That is so good. I need to remember that one. Store that one.
You're still young though. You don't have to worry about that yet.
I know, but I can make jokes.
Yeah.
I need to prepare.
All right, well, cool. That was a great podcast yet again. Kind of
Loved it.
libertarian, kind of funny, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
People look at this and like, you're not funny, you're not a comedian, stop it. But I don't care because I'm going to do what makes me feel good. I'm going to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
If I think I'm funny, that's good enough for me. And my mom will always tell me I'm funny anyway if I ask her. So
They can't all be zingers, you know.
that's true.
A lot of Netflix specials are unfunny, so we don't have to be that funny, but we're pretty funny enough.
Funny enough to get by.
Yep. Damn this. Thank God I didn't cough chronically. You ever get like the itch in your throat? That's like my nightmare for performing is to get that itch.
Just like a dick.
That's it right there. Yeah.
All right. This has been another episode of Kind of Libertarian. Be well, be safe, be free.
Yes.
Bye.